This started like every other session of Steal a Brainrot. I loaded into a packed server expecting the usual chaos. Players sprinting around the map, stealing each other's brainrots, arguing in chat over who took what, and someone somehow managing to start a dance party in the middle of complete mayhem. Nothing about the server looked unusual. If anything, it looked almost too normal. That's usually how these stories begin. The weird part isn't the first 5 minutes. The weird part is realizing that someone has been quietly watching you the entire time. I was running around collecting brainrots when I noticed the same player appearing everywhere I went. At first I assumed they were trying to steal from me. That's the whole point of the game. Everyone is chasing everyone. But after 10 minutes, something felt off. They weren't attacking me. They weren't stealing from me. They weren't even competing. They were simply following me from a distance, standing still whenever I stopped, then continuing to trail behind me the moment I moved again. It felt less like gameplay and more like surveillance. I decided not to say anything because sometimes people recognize YouTubers, even when I'm using a random avatar. Maybe they were trying to figure out if it was me. That explanation lasted about 3 minutes before everything got strange. Out of nowhere, they sent me a private message asking if I wanted free Robux. Every Roblox player has seen some version of that message before. It's practically part of the loading screen at this point. I ignored it and kept playing. A few seconds later, another message appeared. This one wasn't about Robux. It was asking how old I was. That immediately changed the tone of the conversation. There isn't a single legitimate reason for a random stranger in a Roblox server to ask personal questions like that. I still didn't respond. Then another message appeared. They asked if I had Discord. At this point, every alarm bell in my head started ringing. This wasn't someone trying to win a match. This wasn't somebody trolling. They were attempting to move the conversation off the platform. Something Roblox itself warns players to avoid when interacting with strangers. Instead of replying, I started paying closer attention. I wanted to see whether this was a misunderstanding or part of a pattern. I watched where they went whenever I ignored them. They didn't leave. They immediately started messaging another player nearby. Then another. Then another. It was almost mechanical. Walk up to someone, ask their age, mention Discord, offer gifts, move on if ignored, repeat. Watching it happen in real time completely changed my perspective. They weren't focused on me specifically. They appeared to be casting an extremely wide net, hoping somebody would answer. That's what made it unsettling. It wasn't personal, it was systematic. I decided the smartest thing to do was document what was happening instead of engaging. There is a huge difference between documenting suspicious behavior and encouraging it. The safest response is not to play along, not to bait someone into saying more, and definitely not to move the conversation somewhere private. The goal is to preserve evidence, report it through the platform's tools, and move on. So that's exactly what I did. I opened Roblox's report feature, selected the appropriate category based on the behavior I observed, and submitted the report. While doing that, I continued watching from a distance. Within a few minutes, I noticed another player responding enthusiastically. My stomach dropped. I had no idea who they were behind the screen. Maybe they were another adult who recognized the warning signs. Maybe they weren't. That's the difficult part about online games. You almost never know who's on the other side of the keyboard. The suspicious player immediately began encouraging them to continue chatting privately. That was enough for me. I sent the other player a short public message, reminding everyone never to share personal information or move conversations off Roblox with strangers. I kept it simple, because public reminders help without singling anyone out. The longer I watched, the more obvious the pattern became. The account wasn't interested in playing Steal a Brainrot at all. They barely interacted with the game's objectives. Every movement revolved around finding new players to message. They would stand near beginners, wait until they responded, then shift the conversation toward personal topics. When ignored, they instantly looked for someone else. It was almost like watching somebody run through a checklist instead of enjoying a game. Something interesting happened about 20 minutes into the session. Other players began noticing the same behavior. One person asked in chat why the suspicious player kept asking everyone's age. Another mentioned receiving identical private messages. Suddenly, multiple people started comparing what they'd been sent. Every message followed nearly the same structure. That's when the server collectively realized this wasn't an isolated interaction. Whatever was happening had been repeated over and over. The mood of the server changed immediately. People stopped arguing about brainrots. Instead, everyone focused on making sure newer players understood not to respond. Some players encouraged reporting the account. Others reminded everyone not to click links or share usernames from other apps. It was one of the few moments where a chaotic Roblox server suddenly worked together for something important. Eventually, the suspicious account left the server. Whether they left voluntarily or because enough reports had been submitted, I honestly don't know. What mattered was that the interaction ended without anyone publicly sharing personal information. That's the outcome you hope for. Sometimes the safest ending isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's simply preventing a bad situation from becoming worse. After leaving the server myself, I kept thinking about how ordinary everything looked at the beginning. There were no giant warning signs floating over someone's avatar. There wasn't creepy background music. There wasn't an obvious villain speech announcing bad intentions. It blended into everyday gameplay. That's exactly why online safety matters. Most unsafe situations don't announce themselves. They often begin with harmless-sounding questions, friendly compliments, promises of free items, or requests to continue chatting somewhere else. One thing worth remembering is that genuine friendships absolutely happen through online games. Millions of people play Roblox every day, and the overwhelming majority simply want to enjoy the game. The problem isn't talking to strangers. The problem begins when someone starts pushing for personal information, asks you to leave the platform, pressures you to keep secrets, or makes you uncomfortable. Those are warning signs to stop the conversation and report the behavior. Looking back, what surprised me most wasn't the suspicious account. It was how quickly the community responded once everyone compared experiences. One player noticing something unusual might dismiss it. 10 players noticing the exact same behavior paints a completely different picture. Sharing concerns publicly, without revealing personal information, helped everyone understand what was happening. The experience also reminded me how important Roblox's safety features are when people actually use them. Reporting suspicious behavior isn't overreacting. It's one of the main ways platforms identify accounts that deserve additional review. One report provides information. Multiple independent reports describing the same conduct provide a much clearer picture. By the end of the day, I wasn't thinking about the brainrots I collected or the matches I won. I was thinking about how quickly an ordinary gaming session turned into a reminder that online awareness matters. Games should be places where people have fun, compete, laugh, and make memories. Everyone deserves that experience without worrying about strangers asking inappropriate personal questions or trying to move conversations away from the platform. If this story has one takeaway, it's simple. Protect your privacy. Don't share personal information with strangers. Don't move conversations onto private platforms because someone asked. If somebody makes you uncomfortable, trust your instincts. Block them, report them, and tell a trusted adult if you're a younger player. Those small actions make a huge difference. They protect you, and they help protect everyone else who joins the next server after you. That ordinary steal a brainrot session ended with a lesson I won't forget anytime soon. Sometimes the biggest victory isn't stealing the rarest brainrot. Sometimes it's recognizing suspicious behavior early, making smart decisions, and helping keep the community a little safer for the next person who logs.